Chelebiev Jelyal Bulgak. Bulgak is a generic name, an ancient generic name. I am 87 years old. I was born in Kiev. Kefin people. Kiev is a large settlement, a city. There were many Crimean Tatars there.
How many people were there in your family at the time of deportation?
During the deportation, right?
Yes. How many of you were in the family?
We had a big family. There were 11 of us.
Was there any water, food in the wagon? How many people were there?
What I wanted to say, the wagon was full of the Crimean Tatars. There wasn't even enough room to sit down or lie down. There were shelves there, they made shelves. And people were sitting on and under them. The wagon was full. The most difficult thing was the water situation. People were thirsty, but there was no water. The guards, as soon as the train started moving, slammed the doors of the wagons. We were locked up. There were small windows. And people to breathe air pulled their heads to these windows, trying to get closer to the window. The air was very bad. There were no conditions there. In the corner of the wagon, there was made a hole in the floor. It was used as a toilet. The wagon was filled with an unpleasant smell. While the train was on the way, there were also the dead. Then the guards and soldiers came and asked if there were any dead. If they were, you pulled them to the door, and then they themselves took them away. Sometimes the train stopped in the middle of the steppe or near a village, sometimes near a city. At these moments, people quickly went to the water pump and tried to get water. Sometimes there were no dishes, no pots, nothing. Some people took saucepans, went down and made a quick fire and tried to cook something. At this point, it was a very short period of time, the train started moving. People suffered. But sometimes they gave us food. They brought salted fish. People then, fighting, took it. Who gets one fish? Children, someone. I had an older brother. His name was Bilal, and he was 15 years old. He tried not to leave us hungry. When the train stopped, he ran for water, picked up water from the water pump, and tried to cook something. So he did everything he could to help our family. My parents were already elderly. At the time of deportation in our family, none of our elders were near us. The older sister stayed in Simferopol, together with the artists. They weren't with us either. Jelyal Bulgak is our mother. Bulgak is a generic name, an ancient generic name. Our father, Jelyal Chelebiev. My brother Bilal was 15 years old. I was 11. I was already quite a big child. I was 11 years old. I remember everything. I remember how we were deported. We were brought to the city of Yaroslavl. There was one village. I do not remember the name of the village. Yaroslavl region, not the city itself, but the village. We were unloaded there. There were some new houses built there. There were wooden houses built there. One of such wooden houses was allocated to our people. We lived there. I do not remember how long we were there. Probably more than a month. That's where we lived. And then we were moved to Kostroma region. We were brought to one village. There were barracks. We, about 10 families, were placed there, the rest. There were small villages. The Crimean Tatar people were accommodated there. That's how we were assigned. There was no school for children. There were no newspapers. There was nothing from what we call culture. There was no newspaper or book to read. What should we do? Children were growing up in this environment, became ignorant. I was 11 years old. It happened that there were only children, old and women, and no men. It was a form of genocide. After finishing the 10th grade, I was registered in Fergana as a Crimean Tatar. I went and got permission from the commandant to go to Tashkent and go to the institute. He went to Tashkent and studied as a mechanization engineer at the Agricultural Institute. I entered there. The first course I graduated well. You look for your own people. There were 1 or 2 people who studied, but there were few of them. Our people very rarely entered institutes. If we, the Crimean Tatars, met other Crimean Tatars, they were for us as relatives. We talked to each other as if we were relatives. Thus, for all holidays we united. Then, we started to get to know each other. It was students who started to get to know each other. But there was no organized movement of the Crimean Tatars at that time. Our old men, former workers of the Crimean ASSR, started to deal with our national issue, partisans, military leaders. There were many such people among us. Other nations had returned to their homeland, and our people were not even spoken of. They did not return. The repression continued. If we look at the cultural situation, there was nothing. We were not even allowed to say the word Crimean Tatars. So that our people wouldn't just be jailed and subjected to repression. In our national movement, we have developed special conditions for the movement, and we had to adhere to them. That's how the basic principles of the national movement were developed. It is a little difficult to speak in Crimean Tatar about this. And these were important moments so that we would not be repressed. We did not break any laws, but raise questions about the solution of our problem. It was a very difficult process of developing the principles of the national movement. When I came to Crimea, I took a house in Tabansaray village, Karasubazar district. I bought an old house and moved there. And again, if you have already joined a national movement, it is impossible to get out of there. Our people were being deported, tortured, and arrested in Crimea. Kicked out with the words, "Leave the Crimea." They also came to me and said, "Leave the Crimea, otherwise we will arrest you." I answered them, "Where will I go? This is our land. Where will I go?" I have nowhere to go. I am not going anywhere. But I was sent out of this Tabansaray 5 times. And I came back again. I said I would not leave. Each time with the seizure of property. 5 times I was sent out of Tabansaray. For the last time. I came back and went back to the house. At that time I was already married. My wife was not touched. She had a residence permit, and I was evicted. I was tormented a lot in this way. What was I supposed to do? I came back again. Then a Russian family moved into my house. After that I could not get into it anymore. Their things were already there. They could accuse me of being a thief. And I could no longer go into my house to live. And what should I do? I said that I would not leave Crimea. I had such a credo. I will not leave Crimea in any way. It is my land. I will live there. Whether you want it or not, I'll still live here. If you want to jail me, do it. Anyway, I will not leave Crimea. Thus, I started to live in Crimea. I lived at the railway stations for 12 years.